Yeah. I keep dancing to that.
Yes,
I feel
indeed.
like
Every single week.
I feel like dancing at Tarantella.
What's that again?
I feel like dancing at Tarantella.
Oh, very nice. All right, ladies and gentlemen, this is Unscripted for yet another week's episode. I'm Dr. Chris Featherstone. I am here with, of course, my unscripted bro, Bill Apter, and a special guest today. He is former WCW tag team champion, multi-time actually, and hardcore champion too, if I'm not mistaken, in WCW. And he was a WWE star. He was in ECW, and he is here with us tonight. None other than Big Vito. How are you tonight, sir?
I am doing fine, Dr. Chris, Bill Apter. It's a pleasure to be here with you guys on your great show. I heard a lot of great things.
Wait. You forgot something, Chris. He is the toughest man to ever wear a dress.
He is. Absolutely. Yeah.
Investigation from the Federal Bureau of Investigations. You know, since you brought up the dress, and we can talk candidly about these things, everybody says, why'd you wear a dress? Why'd you do this? Anybody here at Vinny the Chin get gigantic, walked around in a bathrobe because you're going to be indicted? Right? So, during my time in the WWE, because of my family ties, I was under investigation myself. So, with that said, now that we are out in the clear and everybody got paid off and it's all gone, that's the reason I wore the dress.
We now know. All the coast is clear, and now it is no longer classified, ladies and gentlemen. Everything can be out in the clear and public, if you will.
It's public and not in the witness protection.
That's indeed.
Anymore.
No, guys, when you talk about wise guys in the business and what they do, right? I was talking to Bill the other day. I said Tulsa King, Sylvester Stallone.
Yeah,
that is a guy. Wears Versace like me. He's got Rolex like me. He's got the debonair clothes like me, And when you are born and bred into something like that, you only know one way. But when you have to get out of certain situations, you know a different way. And never marry a girl named Apollonia because you know what happened to her in the Godfather.
Yes, indeed. What are you up to nowadays, Vito?
Yeah.
I am So happy to be here. Dr. Chris, I heard a lot of great things about you. Bill, don't cough when I'm talking. All right?
Allergies, really bad.
Allergies from greatness, Bill. Come on. Honestly, seriously. Bill had spoken to me about you, and I heard some great things about you in the industry. And it's a pleasure to be on your show, especially with my good friend Bill Apter, who knew Vito LaGrasso when he first started wrestling. We're covering over 30 years of wrestling here.
Wow.
A lot of history.
That's fantastic.
It's an honor and a privilege to be here in Bill Apter's company still after so many years.
Yes, indeed.
I know you guys have a lot of questions. I know we're going to give a lot of great answers. I know we have the chat buzzing right now.
We do.
So you guys shoot away and let's get this. Let's have a great time tonight.
You Vito, I want to start off with, we've missed you quite a bit. A while ago, you kind of walked away from the business. Tell everybody why that happened.
Okay, guys. So the reason I walked away from the business was on my wedding day, my wife got hurt. So, and I had promised her, I said, first before the wrestling business. And we had plans, and I was still wrestling full time, and I had a lot of things in the can. And she got hurt. She went up the first 3 months of our marriage in a hospital. So I had to learn how to deactivate from wrestling mode to be a husband and take care of a handicapped person. And this is a very traumatic experience. It wasn't easy the first year of my life being married. As the years went on, she never got better to where I could leave the house or go confidently. And my heart wasn't in it because I made a promise to her saying, you come first. Now it's a different story. She just had reconstructive back surgery, the second one in 3 months. And she has a degenerative condition. She had 2 strokes. She was in a walker. Things are where I can feel good. So I decided to get back to wrestling because I could do this and I could do on the weekends. And the character or the persona, it's not really a persona, but it's a lifestyle as the Don. I don't know if you guys ever knew this, but I am the nephew of Lucky Luciano, legitimately.
I never knew that.
Yes, sir. And I'm the cousin, like a 3rd or 4th cousin of Paul Castellano. So when you talk about mob history and what's in the wrestling business, I am the only Italian wrestler who's been in all the Italian families in wrestling. You're talking about the FBI, to the Mamelukes, to the NYC, and to a smaller extent, the Slambinos with our good friend who passed away, Howard Brody, when I was doing his organization. So you're talking about a legacy of Italian, heritage right there, and me being connected in all the Italian families. Now, what does that?
Vito, wait, just getting back to what were you talking originally about? Why you walked away from the wrestling business,
right?
And you were talking about your wife, etc. So are you at this point? Is she to a point where you can go back into the wrestling business now?
I can go back, and I went back. I did my first match a few weeks ago in Minnesota. I started taking bookings again because now it's a matter of necessity. I'm strapped with a lot of hospital bills, and I'm strapped with a lot of stuff that goes on. But I have to be home to take care of it. But if I go on the road and I do sign a contract or I do something, now I have the capabilities that if I need to be away from home, I have somebody who could stay with her. And it would be good. Her back surgery was a success. It's a long rehabilitation, but things have to come to fruition for both of us. And I want to end my career the way I started it because I was a hard-nosed wrestler. I could hustle. I could wrestle with the best of them. There wasn't anybody I couldn't wrestle with, and it wasn't anybody who was going to ever out-wrestle me. And I'm not just boasting, but it's legit truth. And when everybody sees my tape on the YouTube channel with the Big Vito brand and going into the Big Vito brand and BigVito.com, and they see all the house show tapes that I was on with ECW, and they say, oh my God, I never knew this. That's because I was just, I was raised in the business. I started my first year in the WWF in 1991, my rookie year.
Hmm.
So when people talk about, going to territories and learning your craft, earning your keep, I did all these things. It's just that sometimes personal life takes you away from the business if you let it.
Yeah.
Some guys don't. I chose to uphold my promise to my wife. Now I'm back, and everything is good. I am in great shape. I look good. People tell me all the time, man, why aren't you wrestling? Why aren't you wrestling? You can't really tell them your personal business, but hey, that's the reason.
Yeah. Vito, how did you get discovered? Who discovered you, and how did you land that spot in 91 in the WWE?
It was a gentleman by the name of Sonny Blaze who used to do the talent for Tony Garea, Pat Patterson, and he was in charge of getting enhancement talent. He saw me working for Johnny Rods, who broke me in the business, and I was working the independent scene. He asked me if I wanted to go to WWF TV. Of course, I said yes. But back then, the funny thing is they said, oh, you're going to do jobs, you're going to do this. It was the best experience I could ever have gotten because all the major guys who were coming out of the business in the WWF were wrestling on the independents.
Hmm.
And then once they said to me, now this is old school tradition. Who broke you into business, kid? Johnny Rods. Okay, come in the dressing room, sit over here.
Hmm.
I never got dressed in the hallway. I never got dressed in the bathroom. I never was treated like anybody like that. I was a sponge. I made the guys look good. I took good bumps. I listened, and I worked with the greatest wrestlers of all time, even before my time began. And I got that experience.
What advice did you receive during that time in the WWE, and who did you receive it from?
Let's see. Anywhere from Bret Hart to the British Bulldog, to Owen, to the Undertaker, to Virgil, to Tatanka, to the Big Boss Man, Owen and Coco, Iron Mike Sharp. And then you're talking about the guys like the Honky Tonk Man, Jimmy Snuka, Jimmy Powers. You're talking SD Jones. You're talking Ted Petty, the Cheetah Kid.
Yeah.
Nikolai Volkov.
Yeah, great.
I mean, Bill Eadie.
Yeah.
I used to wrestle Bill Eadie all the time. Let me tell you something. That guy wrestled with the Super Machines with Andre and Haku. And here I am coming up and I'm wrestling on Tommy Jeanette shows. Yeah, I'm going head to head with Bill Eadie. Now, you don't know the history because you think, okay, it's just demolition. But when you talk about the greatness of what he achieved and where he was wrestling, you're like, wow, I got some good tutelage from good people.
Mm-hmm.
I can't express enough the gratitude I have for those people taking the time to teach me, because a lot of guys today don't teach.
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, it was a great experience. And then I went to the territories on top of it. I went to Japan my second year. I went to the AWF in Puerto Rico. I came home from there. I went to Santo Domingo. I went to USWA. I went back to Carlos Colon for 3 years. I went to All Japan. I went to Malaysia. I did another tour of Japan. And then I went to ECW.
Yeah. So that now, you just mentioned these three letters. You were there at the beginning of ECW. You were there when you came into ECW. Did you think that brand was going to be as legendary as it became?
It was already legendary. It was a great organization because they had all these guys in there, all these characters in there. They had all these guys who I had worked with and knew me.
Yeah.
And, the one thing that was against me is that I already wrestled all the great talents and I could out wrestle anybody. And you know what? When you're too good for your own good and you could back it up, got to eat a little humble pie. Before I went to ECW, guys, I don't know if you know this, but I went to All Japan, and I'm one of the few people to have a pinfall over a Mr. Mizawa.
Mm-hmm.
Very impressive, right? Triple Crown winner, hadn't been pinned in 5 years. He's standing there in green trunks. He's laughing at me in the ring. I say, who is he laughing at with those green trunks? I got mad. I stormed in the middle. I told everybody, come on. I gave him a few uppercuts. I hit him with a stunner. I legit pinned him, right? The place goes crazy, right? Then I come home and like one of the first guys I talked to is Mike Bucci. He said, Vito, did you really pin Misawa? I said, yeah. He was laughing at me. What else did you expect me to do?
Speaking of ECW, if I'm not mistaken, you were part of a loser leaves match on ECW, and that was right before your stint in WCW, if I'm not mistaken, right?
Yes, sir. I did a lot of great singles matches, and I wrestled all the top stars, all the champions, from Rob Van Dam to Sabu to Taz to the Dudleys, and all the rest of the guys there who were hard workers. And then I got the Loser League Town match because I was in a stable called the Baldies.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Right.
And we were wrestling New Jack Bulls and Axel. Very legendary, victory for the Baldies at pay-per-view. And, the sad thing is, and I'm not bad-mouthing anybody, or I'm not heaping praise, if I would have stayed with that group, that foursome would have been a force to be reckoned with because we were just starting to get some steam. I got the call to go to WCW, and I went to Paul Heyman. I said, Paul, I don't want to leave. He said, Vito, you worked your career for this. I can't pay you that kind of money. You have to go. And that's how the Loser League Town match came about.
Yeah. Yeah.
So what did with Paul, huh?
Say it again.
It was good working with Paul overall.
It was very good to work with Paul. He was a motivator. Gave me a job. I earned my keep. He treated me with respect. He knew how to motivate people to do things. And like the most famous night there probably is not the night I wrestled Rob Van Dam in the arena where the arena was split. But the night I wrestled Sid, and I actually earned a job there full-time to fly because nobody wanted. He asked 3 other guys to wrestle Sid, and everybody said no. This is how the conversation went. Vito, can you wrestle Sid for me? I said, yes. Vito, you know what I want, right? Yes. And that was it. So, but I added to it. I wound up going head first over to a table. And then I got stretched out. And when I got to the back, everybody thought he killed me because I took some good shots. And they said, Vito, if you would have fought back, it would have been a hell of a fight. I said, yeah, it would have been. But my job that night was to get Sid over because he's getting prepared for Taz. So I come rolling in on the gurney, all ran from the top of the ECW building down. Here's Taz, here's Dreamer, here's the Dudleys. Vito, you okay? I pick up my head. I said, yeah, isn't that what you guys wanted?
Didn't he choke slam you and like push you over? Like, wouldn't it was like a weird, it was like a really.
I never did that before. It was a first time thrill. And thank God I didn't get killed. But when I got back there, he says, Vito, you not hurt? I says, no. I says, I'm fine. Isn't that what you wanted? He says, you just earned a job here. You start flying next week.
Wow.
That's great. That's great. Well, did you see Paulie's induction into the WWE Hall of Fame?
Yes, I did. It was very much an honor deserved because he was an innovator in the industry. And believe it or not, my first year also, I did a match with beautiful Bobby Eaton on WCW TV. And who was the announcer that night? Paulie Dangerously.
Wow.
So when you talk about a guy who worked from the bottom up, handing out pamphlets, taking pictures, doing this, doing that, and seeing his vision of ECW, no matter what anybody has to say, he lived his dream and did ECW. He definitely earned it, and he multiplied it when he went to the WWE full time. And I think it's a great achievement on his part because, sometimes there are guys who get in and like maybe there is an honorary, but that man earned his spot. Congratulations, Paul.
Yeah.
Yeah, 2000 when you were wrestling in WCW was a bit of it was all over the place really in management wise. I mean, Bischoff was there, then he left, and Russo came in and took over, and then Bischoff came back to work with Russo. It was just kind of all over the place leading into its closure in March of 2001 before, Vince bought it. What was the atmosphere in like 2000 WCW from your experience?
It was kind of crazy because you had Kevin Sullivan as a booker, you had Terry Taylor as a booker, you had Eric Bischoff as a booker, you had Vince Russo as a booker, went to Kevin Nash as the booker. Flair had handed it. Terry Taylor was the booker. So you had all these in and out things, right? So with that, who's going to get pushed? Who's getting taken back? Who's getting pushed again? Who's getting taken back? And and it kind of like stunted my growth in WCW because I was over with the people. I earned my keep. I had a legendary match with a gentleman by the name of Terry Funk, hardcore legend.
Mm-hmm.
And I wrestled him on Nitro for the hardcore title. And if you know the history of Terry Funk, he hadn't been beaten in a singles match with the hardcore title. The week before, 2 weeks before, it was Eric Bischoff. It was me, Johnny the Bull, Eric Bischoff. We gave the title. Then I took the title from Johnny. But I had to beat the man. And for you to beat the man, to be the man, you had to wrestle Terry Funk. And graciously, he handed me that belt and shook my hand that night in the middle of the arena on Nitro. And that was a signature thing because that was my coming out party. I was accepted. And I don't know if anybody ever realized it, but nobody ever got a handshake and a belt to him, handed to them by Terry Funk before. And when a guy like that, of that pedigree, who belongs on a Mount Rushmore, does something like that for you, that's like Hogan Rock. That's like
Yeah.
the biggest things you could ever achieve in wrestling.
What do you where do you see you fitting in currently? Where and how?
Today's wrestling. Down in NXT, they have a stable.
Yeah.
D'Angelo and his new stable that comes in, right? Now, they put a gimmick on somebody. He's been there for 3 years, but unless you have somebody who is recognized as a Don, as a capo, as somebody in the Italian families who could pass you the torch, that would be a place for me to go. Whether it's a manager, right? In TNA, they have the new FBI with Nunzio. Now it's kind of like up and down. But if I came into that situation, I would solidify that situation, right? You talk about AEW with Tony Khan. Wrestling wise, I could fit into a bunch of different spots if I'm going to do hardcore, I'm going to do tag team. But if we start an Italian stable, it would be great and it would be a first because if I have a choice of people to join me, you're talking like, and I'm talking about three specific.
My apologies.
That's true.
Three specific.
It's the allergies again.
Allergies.
I'm done.
I'll mute you whenever you are about to sneeze, so make it better.
So if I had the chance to do that, and I know I've tweeted Tony Khan, I've sent a new story that just came out about me coming back to wrestling and wanting to work in the companies. MLW doesn't have some. You have the MWA I could fit in. But if you talk about specifics in TNA, AEW, and the WWE, there's already things in place for me to fit into.
Mm-hmm.
And it's not like a big extravagant thing, but it would be a powerhouse move, just like when I joined TNA and I made up the NYC, and there I was, forming a new stable. And TNA at that time, Russo was in charge, then he left. Then he came back, then he left. And it just seems like every time I was going to go start to get a good run, and then he left, and okay, take 2 steps back, then go 2 steps forward. So it's kind of rough when people are like manipulating the system or guys are in and out. But the one thing you have to say about Vince McMahon and the WWE with all my time wrestling there, you knew who the boss was. There was one way to do things. You're going to do it this way, and there's no BS. So that's what I enjoyed most because when I watched Vince McMahon work, by the way, he was one of the greatest commentators of our generation, and I think people overlooked that.
He was. He absolutely was.
He was. And when you look at the mindset of the man, the thing I admired him, because I used to watch him, how he walked around, how he knew everybody's name, how he had an idea for everybody, how he knew how to run the company and what he did. And the greatest thing about his commentary was he knew how to sell his product to the people.
Sure.
And I think sometimes that's what we lack today Because in WCW, when I had my run, I had the greatest announcer. They put over everything. Then when I went to the WWE, right, and I had JBL doing the commentary, right, now the dress thing came out. I was the hottest thing going. I went undefeated. How many guys have an undefeated streak? You don't. I was with Nunzio and the FBI, and we had an undefeated streak when Nunzio was champion, cruiserweight champion.
Mm-hmm.
So that's another great accomplishment, you know.
You mentioned Vince McMahon. You mentioned Vince McMahon, and it's no secret to anybody what went on with the allegations with him currently. When you heard all this, what did you think?
Well, guys, I never seen anything.
Brian Clark's in the building, by the way.
Brian Clark, how you doing? I love you, man. I love you. Brian Clark from Chronic, who I happen to have a pinfall victory over, but we won't go into it.
There you go.
When you heard the whole thing about Vince McMahon, what was your take on it?
You just sit there and you like it's a wow thing. But I would tell everybody out here, when it came to Vince McMahon, Stephanie, Mrs. McMahon, Shane, they never did anything to me to disrespect me in the building. They never did anything personal to me. So as far as their interaction with me, it was always good, right? So, I mean, if Mr. McMahon is in some hot water, I hope everything works out to where everything is dissolved, cleared, and everybody can go live their life good. You read a bunch of stories, you hear a bunch of stuff, but sometimes you don't know what the truth is until the facts are the facts.
Yeah.
Well said.
Got a question for you. I don't know if you've ever been asked this question before. I'm really curious about this. So you were on the same card as the ultimate, as the Warrior returning in NWE in Spain.
Yes,
When he main evented against Orlando Jordan in, I believe it was June of 2008, you wrestled a female named Sarah, if I'm not mistaken. And so how was the atmosphere in the backstage of Warrior returning, in a match, first time in many years, and beating Orlando Jordan, becoming champion? That was a big event of Warrior. If I'm not mistaken, that was his last match too. So yeah, how was it backstage, just with Warrior being on that card?
Okay, now I met the Ultimate Warrior in 1991, so I knew Jim when he was in the WWF, and I never seen a body like that in my life. I was like, wow. Because you see it on TV, but then when you're standing next to him in the dressing room, you're just like, oh my God, this is awesome. Yeah. When it came to wrestle Orlando Jordan in Spain, there were a lot of expectations. But when you're away for 15 years, try to come back without practice, without going in and preparation. Now remember, guys, you have to train and do your craft to be perfect. And it's a perfectionist thing. When you're in front of 30,000 people, 40,000 people, what's the one thing they're looking for? They're looking for you to mess up because the eye is on you. And the millions of people who are watching you. He came in and he was probably one of the greatest things that ever happened in the wrestling business at the time. When you come back 15 years later, everybody's expecting to see the same. Now, he was smaller. His hair was short. The jacket was big. The electricity of his return was absolutely off the charts. 2 minutes in the match, referee calls to the back. Rikishi is working the gorilla position. He says, Vito, he says, I want you to get ready. And I'm like, the match is on. He says, you might have to run out there during the match because he was out of gas.
Wow.
Yeah.
So we're sitting there, and everybody in the back is like, oh my God, what are we going to do? He says, Vito, if you got to run out there, just cause a distraction, stay out there for a couple of minutes, let him grab his breath, and he'll come back. Thank God I didn't have to do that, because to a guy like that and that persona, that would have been like terrible. He finished the match.
Yeah.
He came back. Now, I had knew him previously, and as he walked out of the building, I said, hey, Jim. He goes, yeah. I says, listen, it doesn't matter what you did today. You're still one of the greatest that ever wrestled. I said, and just put it behind you. He said, Vito, thank you very much.
Hmm.
Because that was just me respecting the business and who the person was.
Sure.
Now, everybody says the Ultimate Warrior was this, and the Ultimate Warrior was that, and the Ultimate Warrior that. But the way he treated Vito, he was all right. He was good. So I got nothing but like respect for the man. And for me to say that to him out of everybody, and it was the old days too, because everybody had to have a dressing room, their own dressing room in 1991. I think you remember that, Bill. Every Flair had to have him, Hogan had to have him, Macho had to have him. There's only so many rooms in Nassau Coliseum. So, but when he had to have a dressing room for himself, this huge dressing room, everybody crammed in this other dressing room. We were PC too, because we're part of guys. It was like, okay, it's just one of the things. And, they tried to make it great for him.
Yeah.
His wife, Dana, came. The girls came, spoke with the girls, and they were tiny little babies. And, I know Dana from back then. And it was just, overall, it could have been greater than what it was, because if he would have trained a little bit, it would have been better.
Yeah, it was 10 years. I mean, WCW 1998 was the last time he was Halloween Havoc, if I'm not mistaken. 1998 was the last match that he had before that. So it was almost exactly, it was about 4 months away from 10 full years that he's competed in the ring.
Well, here's another thing too, guys. How many years was he separated from the WWE before WCW? I think he got out in, 93?
90. I think it was the walkout was SummerSlam of 92, if I'm not mistaken, and then he came back.
In 98.
Yeah,
he didn't wrestle. So
Vito,
go ahead.
If you had your pick when you make your comeback, it doesn't matter which company it is. If you had to pick one guy there that you want the comeback match to be against, who is that?
There are a lot of guys who I'd like to wrestle today. There's a gentleman by the name of Miro who always intrigued me.
Yeah, sure.
And he's a Vito guy, because he looks like a wrestler, plays like a wrestler. He just has that look, and I always admired him. I said, man, if I can wrestle him, So, I mean, that's one of the gentlemen. There are other guys out there. There are plenty of guys out there I'd like to wrestle. There's some guys out there I'd like to be associated with. I could fit in any gimmick. I could do anything. But when you talk about one guy that critiques me, I mean, that's a guy who I'd like to run a program with, even tag with, or have in my stable. My ultimate dream was to fight Mike Tyson all these years, because I said, you know what, I could fight him. And everybody said, Vito, you're nuts. I said, no, I'm not. I
remember this.
Fight the best. Whether it was Kurt Angle, Kurt Angle is the greatest Olympic wrestler, right? Oh, and he always used to give me tips on how to train. So I always used to go up, hey, Kurt, you want to wrestle today? You want to go roll around in the ring? Nope, Vito, I don't want to wrestle you. I said, why not? He said, you have that look, and you're the type of guy I don't want to wrestle. But he meant it in a good way, not in a negative way.
Yeah.
But it doesn't go without saying that when the day that I challenged Dan Severn, which everybody knows who Dan Severn is, ground and pound, most famous, UFC fighter.
Yep.
So it was the Rock and Roll Express, Balls and Axles, Sandman, a couple of other guys, and I said, yeah, Kevin Sullivan was there. So I said, I had to wrestle him that night. He goes, guys, I'm going to shoot on Dan Severn. They said, Fear, you freaking crazy. I said, no, man. I said, I want to see how good I am. But everybody didn't know that I could mat wrestle and actually wrestle, right? Because I trained with Johnny Rosin. He was a shooter, and I knew how to shoot. So I go in there, and I go out. Boom, I'm leg diving, grabbing him. It was the best 2 minutes of amateur wrestling you ever seen in your life. He got up, and he looked at me, and he was like, what the hell? So we finished the match. All the boys were looking through the curtain. I said, you freaking crazy son, SOB. I can't believe you did this. What are you doing? He said, so he comes back. He said, Vito, where did this come from? I said, I just wanted to see how good I was, so I challenged you.
Very nice. All right, let the listeners know where to find you, my man, and any upcoming shows.
I got a bunch of stuff happening. Please go to my website, BigVito.com. Go to the Big Vito brand. Check out our YouTube page at the Big Vito brand. I'm sure Bill Apter and Dr. Chris will put out my credentials. Guys, it's a pleasure to be back in the wrestling business. I want to finish my career. If any of the companies are listening out there, I am a good fit for a bunch of roles, not only as a wrestler or a manager, but being a producer and being a trainer, because I could help teach today's wrestlers what we forgot years ago. And Wrestling 101 always works.
I mean, look at him. Look at him, ladies and gentlemen. Look at him. He looks like someone who can manage Tony D'Angelo in NXT like right now. Just go ahead and put him on Tuesdays. As of next Tuesday, book him. Let's go. He's a pro. He's a legend.
Totally agree.
He's a former champion. Come on, man. Let's do it. Let's do it. Put it on the books. For Bill Apter, for Big Vito, for WCW World Tag Team Champion, WCW Hardcore Champion, ECW Star, TNA, WWE.
Great husband.
I don't know that, but
I know that.
According to Bill Apter, so yeah, I'll take his word for it. So indeed, he's a great. Even a bigger reason for WWE to bring him in. He's a great husband, man. Come on, bring him in.
But also a guy we could have backstage in the dressing room when guys need advice about how to wrestle and how to handle themselves like old school, and not everybody jump over the top rope. This guy has that memory of what it was to be a professional wrestler, that he could bring so much knowledge to the younger guys.
Indeed. Yes, indeed. Check out BigVito.com. As soon as we get off air here, go to BigVito.com. Check out all things Big Vito. Until then, Big Vito, Bill Apter, I'm Dr. Chris. This is Unscripted. Have a good night, everybody.